You've carved your notch, you're bowing along, you see a little bit of smoke, and you're watching that dust fall down into that notch just like it should. So you know you've got the right amount of downward pressure. But when you stop, the smoke disappears and there's no ember. So what went wrong? It's only the third most common reason why we fail with the bow and drill. Here we go. Not to beat a dead horse here, but the fire triangle tells us that we need oxygen, fuel, and heat in order to create a fire. And I like to think of those three ingredients in that order. Oxygen first, then the fuel, then the heat. Because that is the standard order of operations that we go through when we're preparing a fire. Let's look at it in a little bit closer detail. Oxygen is a given. There's air all around us all the time. So step one is taken care of, and we move on to step two. We create those fine shavings, or a lot of people will like to create feather curls with their knife on a piece of wood. That's the fuel. Then you go into your kindling, right on up the fire chain to your sustaining fuels. And then, after you've already got the fuels laid out, you light it up, you add the heat, and you strike it up. And notice that the heat must contact the fuel. I can stand 6 feet away from this tinder bundle and wear out a brand new 6-inch ferro rod throwing sparks at it and never catch a flame. I've got to get that ferro rod and striker close, so that those sparks, the heat, contacts those fuel shavings. That is incredibly important, because when it comes to bow and drill, it's one of the most common mistakes that we make. If you've seen any of my other videos on bow and drill, friction fire, then you have probably heard me say that you need to apply light to medium pressure on that spindle until the dust is overflowing that notch, until the point where the bottom of your spindle is buried into that dust. That is the hottest part of the whole entire set. The heat is the very bottom portion of your spindle, right where the friction is happening. That hot part of the spindle has to be buried into that dust to light it up. That's why we overflow the notch. Okay, I twisted this ember to show you 2 points. The first point is that this ember ignited at 451 degrees. That's way cooler than what you're going to produce with a spark rod, a ferrocerium rod, at about 6,000 degrees. Much cooler. That's why we get the dust, because the dust is much smaller than feather curls or fatwood shavings or whatever. The second point is, look at this pile of dust there. Every time you've seen a successful bow and drill ember, you've seen it created in a pile, a tall stack of dust right there. That's because the bottom of that drill has to be below that dust. It's got to be buried into that dust. Remember, the very bottom of your drill is the hottest part. It has to contact your fuel.